testing this? Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, everyone. 10 years ago, just a little bit of a personal story about how I got here and what this means to me, not me speaking here, but me being in a room with all of you all. 10 years ago when I was in my grad studies, and all I knew was I wanted to combine something of design, right? Something of design, that's when design was kind of coming into the fore. And learning, I was very passionate about developing people and educating people, and technology. And I wanted to squish these together, and at that time I thought the only way to do that was to do some research and a master's degree, which I was doing, and then go work at a university or a public education institution, right? We kind of put together education, development together with kind of the formal pillars of learning, which is university or community college, and so on and so forth. So since then, right, I could not even imagine that there would be a role in technical companies specializing in how to get technical folks to learn better, or how to apply learning to technical organizations, much less that there are 100 people who are doing the same thing. So I just want to commend the organizers for just getting us together and recognizing that there actually is a tribe out there, and there is actually work going on, and this is actually very important work. And you can't study for it, you can't read for it in a book, and so we have each other, right? So I just want to recognize the organizers again. Can we just give them applause for just bringing us together? Bringing us together is a big feat. And so I just want to recognize us as a tribe, right? We are a tribe who has been doing very important work in our organizations. And probably together, we have so much collective experience at this point, where this is kind of where my talk kind of comes in. A little bit of story of this is, so I'm actually going to speak this again 3 weeks from now at a CTO summit. Not really completely with my tribe, it'll mostly be with the people that I serve, right? Senior managers, CTOs, directors of engineering, who are really concerned about different things relating to their people, to their organizations, and how do you apply learning to help optimize and solve these challenges, right? So these will be the people that I serve. And so I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, a lot of these folks from an engineering background and design background, by the way, kind of was educated around this idea of design patterns, right? So a design pattern is a kind of a common solution that's well known to apply to solve common challenges, right? And it's kind of codified, it's codified. So then I had this idea, I said, what if together as a community, we have enough aggregate knowledge at this point where we could go beyond kind of tribal knowledge, as it were, to maybe take an attempt to try to codify where we are right now. What are our best practices right now? And try to put it together in a language, in a catalog, that we could help serve each other, right? That we can solve some of our common challenges without having to reinvent the wheel again and again and having the same things. And also, if we have these that we all kind of collectively agree on, more likely that the people that we serve will kind of more see into yes, this is best practice. It's not just me, it's my whole community that is behind this. So that's a little bit about the background, right? That was a little bit about the background. So this was my impetus, right? This is what's on my mind for the people that I serve. I want to reduce this feeling in engineering organizations, in engineering leaders, right? And I know that a lot of this can be because it's difficult. Engineering is difficult, right? Engineering is just hard. And many of the constituencies that we work for, we're on the cutting edge. We're doing amazing things that has not been done before. So yes, they're gonna feel like this. But I also propose that a lot of this feeling is due to an unawareness of some of the learning challenges in their teams and organizations. Number one, not recognizing that it is a learning challenge. And then number two, because they weren't trained they weren't trained on how to use the correct principles of learning, apply it with design to a technical audience, that you kind of get this, right? You kind of just, it's more of kind of a feeling, a state of mind than anything else. So anyways, that's just a little bit of my intention. So what I'm gonna do in my talk today is I'm just gonna introduce this concept of design patterns, a little bit of, kind of where it came from, and I want to kind of pull the room because I'm just starting this, and I want to see if you all thinks this is valuable as a community that we actually attempt, right? So, and then if you do, then I'd like to invite you right here. We'll kind of run a little bit of interaction where we'll have you get it on your laptops, and we'll actually do a design pattern. We'll actually start pulling this kind of experience out of your head and using a framework to be able to abstract it, generalize it, and then submit it. So it's a little bit of a crowdsourcing right on the spot, but also to get you to start thinking about your own experiences in terms of patterns, so that you can start to be able, in your own mind, yes, this was solved to the best of our ability, and these hasn't, right? So the ones that solved to the best of our ability, we could kind of put a pin in there and just bring it up again and use it without having to spend energy going back to it for now, unless a new discovery is found that kind of disrupts the pattern. And then we could go on to spend our energy on the more unique situations, the unique challenges. Okay, so quick snapshot. Just based off what I said so far, who here thinks that attempting to collect the collective patterns from all of our experiences and codifying it is maybe a good idea? Okay, I haven't won over the whole room yet, but I'm totally about half. So, and I genuinely want feedback, right? So if this is not a good idea, I'm not gonna spend time on it. Okay, so here's a little bit of a background on design patterns itself. It probably started with this book over here. Those in the architecture or UX design spaces, you may recognize this. This was the attempt about 100 years ago in the architecture field. Some of the same things was happening. Architects were just solving things again and again and again until this book came along who said that, hey, why don't we actually codify our collective knowledge on some of the things that we solve, put it together in patterns and write it in a book. And that became a help to the field for them to go on and do some more innovative things. So actually, UX designers like this book a lot because it shows a little bit how it was. This book in the middle, who here recognizes this book in the middle? Do we have any engineers? Yes, yes. So in my research, this is kind of the source material for engineering design patterns, right? I think it was written in early 90s, I believe. Anyways, and they call it the Gang of Four book, right? The Gang of Four book on engineering patterns. So I'm actually using this book in the middle here and using the same frameworks that they did and translating that over to our field, the technical learning field. All right, so if you're not familiar with the design pattern, here are some of the benefits, right? So it reduces analysis because we often have the same kind of conversations over and over with our stakeholders, right? Engineering manager, I have this problem. Let's say there's a major release coming up. Everybody needs to know about it. And some people need to know about it deeply. It's more than a communication issue, right? It's a learning issue. How do we do that? Right, they either go back to what they know and let's just have a really big transfer of information session, and we're just gonna invite everyone in, we're gonna put the engineers working on a stage, and they're just gonna run through all of their knowledge. Either what they know, right, or they're asking you for solutions, and you are essentially almost doing kind of custom work every single time. So it could reduce analysis because it could be known problems. It could speed up the build, focus attention on unique situations. This is what I mentioned before. One of the goals about doing something like this, if we had this kind of catalog, is that then we could say, oh, this is known. Maybe in some instances you might have to tweak it. So it's not in the applicability, how you apply it, you may need to tweak to put it into your situation. But at least you identified it's a common challenge. There are some best practice solutions to it. That could help immensely, I think, in our work. Communicate mental model is easier. So something that is, I noticed just in our kind of communications, even though we're a tribe, we all live in different areas of the technical world, right? And sometimes I notice that we develop our own, ways of talking about things, right? And some of it is developed in our own kind of culture of our organizations that we serve, right? So maybe we call trainers, teachers, instructors differently, right? Or we need to make sure that when we're saying a word that it means the same thing to you often, right? So if we had a catalog that was consistent in the way that things were defined and talked about, and if we all agree on it, it could kind of help our communication a little bit easier. And then finally, it could be a shareable resource, right? So I think not to replace community, which is super important, but it just gives us a way, something written that we could share. Okay, so the 4 elements of a design pattern. 1, the name, I'm not gonna spend time, the name, the problem, the solution, the consequences. I'm gonna go into this more. And actually, did we figure out how to read notes, the speaker notes? Anyone? Okay. All right, so I actually want to read you the actual definitions of each of these so that I don't kind of wing it. Do we know we can? Okay. Oh, sure, yeah.
Go for it.
Thanks, Katie.
People have to tweet now, because I don't have my laptop.
Okay, so I wanted to be a little bit, make sure that I got these right, because we're defining terms here. So the pattern name, that is obviously the name, but I want to describe it in a certain way, right? And this is all from this book. The handle we use to describe a pattern in a word or two, the name should immediately increase our design vocabulary and let us design at higher levels of abstraction. Those are 2 kind of interesting concepts. Having a vocabulary for patterns lets us talk about them with our colleagues. Finding good names has been one of the hardest parts of developing our catalog. So actually, it's the hardest thing to do. The problem describes when to apply the pattern. It explains the problem and its content. Okay, solution. Oh, oops, this is the wrong slide. Okay, there we go. So pattern name conveys the essence of the pattern succinctly. The class helps us organize patterns in terms of purpose or scope. So I've been trying to do this as I've been going through the patterns, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. The intent, what does the design pattern do? Also known as, I haven't figured out a way to make that apply yet. Motivation, this is kind of like our why. A scenario that illustrates a design problem. The scenario will help you understand the more abstract description of the pattern that follows. Applicability, what are the situations in which the design pattern can be applied? How can you recognize the situation? Structure, graphical representation of the classes in the pattern using a notation-based interaction diagram. So I like creating the UML diagrams that engineers like to employ. Participants, right? These are the participants here means the objects of the design patterns. I think for us, it means the actual people that are involved. But we're abstracting them in terms of different things like roles and not actual titles, because we want to make this universally applicable. Collaborations, how participants collaborate to carry out their responsibilities. Consequences, this is important because it shows us what the trade-offs and results of using the pattern. Because this is not completely technical, it involves human beings, there are always trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. And also there is also imperfect applicability because we're dealing with humans in an organization, albeit technical, but still. Implementation, what pitfalls, hints, or techniques should you be aware of when implementing the pattern? And then a sample, and then known uses of cases in real systems. Like where did we draw out this knowledge from to be able to abstract this? Okay, so I know that was a little bit dry, but we need to kind of define this because we're actually gonna try it. Okay, so this is my current catalog of tech learning patterns. I have 5. I wanna ask, how many of you just by reading this, kind of knows exactly what these are. Okay, so iffy. All right, see, so we need to work on the names, right? So the names are important. It should be immediately recognizable what these are applied to. What's maybe difficult is where I started in the class of design patterns I was going for. I wanted to start with the organizational class. So that is challenges, learning challenges across technical organizations that sometimes typically we aren't even asked to solve, but it's a part of our daily life. And I'll go into some of these. Certification and bootcamp, are these more familiar? Yes, so these goes more into kind of our bread and butter of what we do on a daily basis for our work. It's typically what we've been asked to do. And I think right now, you could probably think of more, right? If you think into your own experience, your own organization, your own work, you could probably think of more and the class that it involves in. So probably certification and bootcamp, I'm thinking like this is kind of team level. These three are what I call organizational level, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we maybe go into one. Can I go into one, Katie? That document? Yeah, the doc.
There it is.
Okay, so this is my work in progress, and I just wanted to bring you through one. Right, great. Okay, and I'll go through it quick because I want enough time for us to kind of go through the exercise. So Cascade Learning, okay? The intent, disseminating technical knowledge and skills that currently reside in one or a small group of people to as many people in the organization as possible in a constricted time limit. How many of you saw this in your organization? This was actually a challenge. Yeah, so this is common, especially for technical organizations or those who are not that big. They're startups, they're constantly pivoting, and that usually means technical pivots. And technical pivots, frankly, freak out the whole company because nobody knows the technology they're pivoting into. And now they need to learn this technology in a very, very short amount of time. And probably the only person who knows this technology is the engineer that is doing it. And the whole rest of the company needs to learn it, right? So that is not just a technical challenge or a business challenge, that is a learning challenge. And if we go through it enough times, I went through it about maybe 3 times in my career, it's probably enough to start thinking about what are the common patterns, right? The technical pivot. Technical organizations, companies, sometimes for different reasons, have to be enabled on a new technology or platform in a short time frame. The given technical employee base either has no knowledge or skills related to that technology, or that knowledge and skill currently reside in a small group of technical people. When this happens, the technical person, the subject matter expert, SME, immediately becomes the most important person to successfully enable the rest of the organization. There have been a number of different approaches on how to best leverage that person together with other organizational assets. This pattern attempts to provide the template of best practice in the situation to avoid overutilization of the SME and provide the most efficient and effective learning curve possible given the circumstances, right? So, applicability. Use this pattern in the following situations. Adoption of a new technology that has major ramifications to employee learning. Addition of a platform to your current product. So at both of my companies, Docker and Nutanix, these are more kind of infrastructure-based companies. They decide to add another infrastructure layer that really just, it changes the entire architecture of the product. And it just reverberates across the entire organizations, from engineering, who has to redo everything, going down to the support team, the customer success team, the solutions architects, the sales engineers, more so than a communication issue, whereas like this is what's happening, this is what's going to be in this next major release. Most of these people actually have to know how to use it and be able to talk about it intelligently. Business decisions that require change in underlying infrastructure, right? Okay. So here's my UML document that you can't see completely. But you get the basic idea. An anti-pattern, how many of you see this in your organizations? An anti-pattern is to take, this represents the SME, the subject matter expert. or a small group of people that knows, probably the only people that knows this product or technology. The goal is to get to circle 2, right? To affect as many people in the organization as possible. Typically what I've seen is, as an anti-pattern, is they just try to get this person to go off into the organizations and hold as many one-to-many events as possible to try to get the organization onboarded, right? What I think, based off of my experience, and also I went back and researched I did research and interviews with my former colleagues, that a better pattern, a design pattern, would be, instead of leveraging this person as one-to-many, leverage this SME as one-to-one to the most key constituents in what I call stage 1 group of people. These are the people that are bridges to the rest of their respective organization. So for example, in this circle can be the key solutions architect, the consultants, who needs to understand not everything about it, but certain things and be able to translate it to their customers. Maybe this person is the support person, right, who needs to know how it will fall apart, how it will break, and translate that to the customers. Maybe this person is the, I don't know, the product marketer or the sales engineer, right? The pattern is that though there are key intermediaries who knows how to grasp and learn things as fast as possible, and then can turn around into a one-to-many to translate this to their particular organization, right? This is hard for engineering leaders to kind of grasp because it seems slower at first, but actually you derive exponential returns just by allowing this SME to have one-to-one relationships with the key people across organizations instead of everyone. Right, so I just kind of described this, right? So the consequence, the initial decision to limit only a few resources to a smaller group, a more meaningful enablement of that knowledge may seem slower to start, but the results are exponential as momentum while the new technology is accessible. They're allowing a few more key constituents to become as knowledgeable as possible, and then enabling them to have one-to-many relationships with their respective functional teams. The leader trades off quick wins, which is tempting given the time constraint, but achieves far better learning results in the same time. So this is what I've seen in my own experience, and I put it together in a platform. Then just talk about implementation, right? Which we need to go into with, okay. We'll go back. Quick check-in. Does that resonate with anyone? Just that one little pattern? That you see this in your organization? Okay, awesome. Now, how did I went about in creating this? You see, it's a little bit more abstraction. It's not a case study. It's not a case study. I took over my 2 organizations, very similar things that happened at least 3 or 4 times, and I had to abstract it, generalize it in a bit, so it's not specific to my organization. So then, with the goal, then it could be applicable to yours. So this is how I did it. I collected my own stories and the stories of my colleagues. I had to outline a play-by-play of what happened, like just what happened. Then we need to isolate the human learning situation. So some things are not a learning challenge, right? It could be a communication challenge. For example, in a major product release, what is in it? Most of that is a communication challenge, but for some people, it is a learning challenge. To track communication or management issues, and then do a thought process. If you would how would you optimize if you would do it again? A lot of our experiences are actually probably not patterns yet, they're actually anti-patterns, right? Because we're just learning as we're going along. But that's okay, that's a part of the process of getting to a pattern. Then for it, we create a learning pattern. Now, I'm at 5 minutes, so I was gonna have everyone kind of go through this, but we're out of time. But let me do this. Can you take down this tiny URL? I like to just give out an invitation that sometime within this week, you would go in and just run this exercise with your own experience. This is a Google form, which actually outlined all of those 13 categories, and just go in and outline something really quick and submit it. I feel like I could ask you to do this because it's not just for, right, it's not just for me and my work. I think if we have a way to collect everyone's experience, it will help all of us. So we're out of time, but please take this down and maybe even sometime this week or even maybe today, just take 5 minutes, put something in and submit it. And then I'm collecting your emails in that process, just FYI, so that we can maybe have some more dialogue afterwards when you collect, and we can make it, we could codify it together. And of course, attribution, of course, to you. Okay, so I think that's all that I had. I want to end early, because I think we're trying to have question and answers in every session, is that right? Okay, great. So thank you. Here's how to get a hold of me. I would love to be able to meet you. Please reach out. Let's chat.